first ever inductee into the Australian Survivor Hall of Fame was perhaps the most obvious choice when it came to recognising someone who has had a significant impact on Australian Survivor in its close to 20-year history. Rob Dickson dominated the inaugural season on Channel 9, which aired in 2002, showcasing a bevy of skills from a dominant social and strategic game right through to a strong physical prowess that has him arguably in a very select group of Australian Survivor players who can easily be considered among the greatest Australian Survivor players of all time. Rob's strong game easily took him to the end, in which he eventually defeated Shona Brown 5-2 in the final vote. Now, in both the fan and expert votes in the 2020 Australian Survivor Hall of Fame, Rob dominated, easily securing the highest percentage in both halves of the vote, securing a legacy many already know exists. Now, unfortunately, as many people know, Rob, sadly, of course, is no longer with us anymore, but to accept his induction into the Australian Survivor Hall of Fame, it is an absolute honour and privilege to speak with Rob's father, Rick Dickson, today to formally present this award, as well as talk a little bit more about Rob's legacy in Australian Survivor. Rick, first of all, thanks for chatting with me today, and on behalf of us here at the Australian Survivor Hall of Fame, congratulations to Rob for being inducted into the Australian Survivor Hall of Fame.
It's a pleasure.
What do you think this would mean to Rob, Rick, to be inducted into the Australian Survivor Hall of Fame?
I think he'd be totally overawed. He would appreciate it because of the work he put in, but he was always into that sort of achievement, and I just think he'd be blown away with it.
Do you remember Rob telling you that he was going to apply for Survivor at all, Rick? And when you found out, what did you think about him going on the show?
Well, he told me that he had applied, and he told me how he, on a Sunday afternoon, he put his presentation, but it was a last-minute thing. He was always thinking about it, and he put it in, and then we sat back and we waited, and there was an enormous amount of entries, and when he got down to the last 16, he then told me what he actually did when he walked in, and they didn't believe him. He sat down and he told them that he was a helicopter pilot, he was a former AFL footballer, he never drank, he never smoked, he'd never camped in the bush. He jokingly told them that the only time he'd ever been in a tent was in the lounge room of our house. But next minute he tells me he's in. And then the mystery was, where was it going to be held? Well, I've got a brother-in-law over in South Australia, and he told me that over at Port Lincoln, there was a lot of activity going around Whalers Way.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to Robert, I got a feeling that you're going to Whalers Way. As it turned out, that's where it was.
Wow. Fantastic. So you then no doubt assume that he's fine. He's going to be golden. He's going to do quite well out there in Whalers Way.
No, I didn't think he would survive, actually.
Wow, okay.
In the bush. But, well, I know for a fact that he was given a handful of rice and basically some water, and that was the food for the first 3 days. And when he finished, he'd lost 10 kilo, and he was a very fit person.
Mm-hmm.
But, an interesting thing about the food, he, being Robert, he improvised, and one day he found some small abalone, and it was a real treat. They ate this abalone, but the South Australian government were going to sue him for taking undersized fish, sort of thing, which he couldn't handle very well.
Which then, when he's finished playing the game and you get that opportunity to speak to him when he's come home, what was his mindset like? And obviously he's not going to give away how well he did, but what did you think, based on how he was talking to you, how well he had done?
Well, he came back. When he came back, and if I've got it rightly, he went up to Brisbane for a couple of days, and he was a mental and physical wreck. And he rang me and he said, I am totally mentally and physically exhausted, and I can't tell you what happened. And I said to him, well, Rob, out of 10, give us a figure. And he said 10. And that's when I told his brothers and that, I said, well, there's something. He's obviously, if I ask you, how did you go out of a score of 10, and you say 10, something seriously has gone well, right? But and then we sat back and we waited, and because they knew that the survivor started to run, I believe Robert knew he was in the last 2 or 3, right? And we went to that the night where they had showed the last 2 episodes, and what we didn't realise with the whole survivor team was behind the curtain up on the stage, and wow. It was quite interesting when it got down to where Katie had to jump off the board off the ship. The noise level of the crowd was incredible because, you know, and I don't know whether I should say this, but they were screaming out, Rob, push the so-and-so, push her, because she didn't want to jump. But the other thing was, which was interesting, we were invited in the front row, and I was sitting next to Peter, and I was watching, and there was 2 stairways or steps going up to the stage, and Shona's people were on the right-hand side and we were on the left-hand side. And I mumbled to Peter, I said, Peter, I got a feeling Robert's won this. And he said, why do you say that? I said, well, have a look where the TV cameras are. They're on the steps of the other side, right? And we were told that if it so happens that he won, is to the family to go up onto the stage immediately. And I said, well, we can get up there, but she can't. So we sat back and watched, but it was a very tense situation, obviously, but we had the premonition that he'd won it because of the way the TV cameras were placed.
Fantastic. That's always love hearing those little stories about how you can read kind of the cameras and situations like that. What did it mean to Rob to win the season, but also be the first ever winner of Australian Survivor, something that he'll always go down as the first ever winner of Australian Survivor?
Well, to give you an example in Melbourne, how much the Survivor was watched. My father played football for Richmond, and we had a Hall of Fame night, and I took Robert to this night, and we were sitting at a table, and as we were leaving, 2 guys came up, and the Survivor series hadn't finished, and they grabbed Robert and they said, Rob, and they took a selfie of them with Robert. And I walked away with Robert, and I said, and he said, it's happening all the time. But I said, those 2 guys have they didn't know it at the stage, but they got a selfie with the winner. Could you imagine how they were when he won it?
Yeah, that's incredible to think that, because one thing that really shined, as I mentioned in the introduction, Rick, with this vote is that the votes came in heavy from both us at the expert panel and also the fan contingent. So it really goes to show that Rob has a legacy still nearly 20 years later from Australian Survivor. I mean, to yourself, you're obviously very biased being Rob's father based on his legacy. But I mean, what do you think Rob's legacy is to Australian Survivor nearly 20 years on from when he did win the game?
Well, those that are Survivor fans would, what we saw was the way it was presented, you always thought Robert was going to go out, right? So everyone was sitting on the edge of their seats watching, will he survive? Will he survive? And as Robert said, he played it as a game, right? And initially his plan was to stay under the radar. don't, and slowly but surely he hung in there. But I just feel that the accolades he got once he'd won it were incredible. And like, he went on to a speaking circuit and all that. And if I can tell you a very funny, because you had to know Robert. He would take the mickey out of people and laugh and get away with it. But at Hawthorn one day, they set up a meeting with 300 ladies to listen to the winner of Survivor. And being Robert and being a Hawthorn footballer, he's got this audience. And I said, how do you speak to these people? He said, it's easy, Dad. You just sit there and let them ask questions. You don't. You just answer questions, right? So one lady said, Rob, what did you do with your mother-in-law? Did she ever come and live in Australia? What? And he had 300 women absolutely enthralled with him. And he said, oh, no, she still lives in the up and above in the second floor apartment down in Franklin, where she's always been. Well, he said he lost 300 women in a second. They all turned on him, and then he said, no, I'm joking. And then he told the real story. But this is how the influence he had. He could attract speaking circuits and all that, and he loved it.
Yeah.
One other little thing that, as you know, he won $500,000. Mm-hmm. To Robert was unbelievable. But he showed me, we were waiting for the money to come in, and one day I was with him and he said, Dad, have a look at my bank account. It had $35 in, and the next day it had $535,000. And I said, well, Rob, that just took the wrinkles out of your bank account, didn't it?
Oh, fantastic. It's, wow, so great to hear these stories, Rick, and it really is a pleasure to be able to chat with you today and chat about Rob's legacy and really be here to honour just the achievement of Rob, not only winning Australian Survivor, but just the achievement on life he did have. And I would like to formally, again, congratulate Rob on behalf of yourself and everyone in the Dickson family. I've got this award here, which I'll hold up to the camera, which we will ship to you over the coming weeks for you to be able to sort of maintain that there. But Rick, absolute pleasure, as I said, on behalf of everyone here at the Australian Survivor Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Rob on his induction, and a very worthy recipient of an inaugural induction into the Hall of Fame.
Okay, thank you.